under a sky the color of tarnished brass. The desert lay still, its breath held. The sun hung low, bleeding out across the rim of the mesas, spilling red light over the cracked earth. Wind carried the taste of iron and dust, whistling through the ribs of a long-dead cottonwood. Somewhere far off, a coyote yipped, thin and sharp as broken glass. Bo Carter moved through that silence like he belonged to it. Slow, deliberate steps, boot heels pressing memories into the sand. His shadow stretched long in the dying light. The brim of his hat pulled low enough to hide his eyes but not the furrow in his brow. A rifle rode easy in his hand, worn smooth where his fingers had lived too long on the grip. The air smelled faintly of gun oil and old leather. He paused at the edge of a dry arroyo, eyes narrowing at the tracks cut into the dust. One set of hoof prints, deep and erratic. Another set lighter, faster, crossing them. The heavier trail bled into the desert like a wound, and both followed without hurry. Men who ran were easier to find when you let the land do the chasing. The wind rose, tugging at his coat, carried with it a sound just beyond hearing. Hooves, maybe, or memory. His left hand slipped into his pocket, closing around a broken silver watch. The chain was snapped, the glass cracked. It ticked no more, yet he kept it as if time itself might one day beg forgiveness. A hawk cried overhead. Bo looked up, squinting against the sun, and that's when he saw her. She sat astride a paint mare on the far ridge, still as a stone, the dying light gilding the curve of her cheekbone. Black hair pulled back in a single braid, turquoise bead tied into the rawhide at her wrist. Her gaze found him with precision of a drawn bow, unblinking. He kept his rifle low, but didn't move closer. "You been following me?" His voice was dry, a low scrape over gravel. "I've been watching," she said, her words carrying on the wind, as if the desert itself had decided to speak. Something in her tone, flat but edged, set the air between them taut. "What for?" Her horse stepped forward, and he caught the faintest sway of her body. The hand she let rest against her belly before dropping to her thigh. "Save my people," she said, each syllable deliberate, "and I will give you strong offspring." He almost laughed. "Almost? That your opening bid?" Her jaw tightened. "The railroad men come for us. They burn what they cannot take. They will not stop." Bo studied her in the bleeding light, the shadow of his hat hiding the narrowing of his eyes. "And you reckon I'm the sort to trade bullets for promises?" "You're the sort who knows ghosts don't sleep," she said, and something in the way she looked at him told him she saw more than he'd offered. The wind shifted. The air thickened with the smell of something distant, wood smoke. He turned his head slightly, scanning the horizon. "How far?" "Too close," she answered. Her mare's ears twitched. Bo heard it then. The faint ring of iron on stone, the whisper of movement beyond the ridge. His hand drifted toward the rifle stock without hurry, though his heart had found a harder beat. "You bring company?" Her gaze didn't leave his. "No, but they've been watching you, too." He shifted his stance, eyes narrowing toward the ridge behind her. Just for a moment, he thought he saw the glint of metal in the dying light. Then the hawk screamed again, cutting across the silence like a warning. The sound came sharp and sudden, a single rifle shot cracking open the dusk. Dust leapt from the dirt 2 feet from his boot. Her horse reared. She pulled hard on the reins, holding her seat, but her eyes were on him. "They've found us," she said. Bo brought the rifle up smooth, his voice low enough she had to lean to hear it. "Then you better decide quick whose side you're on." Somewhere beyond the ridge, another shot rang out, closer this time. The hawk wheeled above them once more before vanishing into the darkening sky. The desert did not breathe. It waited. The air was taut, hot as a stove lid, humming with something just out of sight. Heat shimmered above the ground, and the horizon swayed like a drunk trying to stand. Every shadow felt longer than it should be. Bo Carter crouched in the brittle grass along the rim of a shallow gully, rifle pressed against his shoulder. Sweat slid down his temple, cutting through the grit on his skin. His eyes stayed on the ridge where he'd last seen the flicker of movement. Small, careful, almost respectful in how it claimed the land. Whoever was out there knew how to walk without announcing themselves. Beside him, the Apache woman didn't blink. Her mare shifted its weight, the leather saddle creaking in the dry silence. She didn't look at Bo, didn't need to. The line of her jaw was tight enough to draw blood if she bit down harder. "They won't come head on," she said, voice flat as a plane. "They'll wait for you to move." "Then I won't," Bo replied. His thumb rolled the edge of the rifle's hammer, not pulling it back, just feeling the steel's cool bite. The wind pushed a sheet of dust between them and a ridge, and Bo's eyes narrowed. A trick of light, maybe, but it seemed the dust was already curling around boot leather and the silver glint of something long and deadly. Then came the sound. Not a gunshot. Not yet. A metal clink, faint and quick, like a spur on stone. "They're testing the wind," she murmured. He spared her a look. "And you?" Her gaze finally cut to his. There was no apology in it. "I'm deciding." That answer settled in his gut heavier than a bullet. The first shot came from somewhere above them, sharp and cracking, ripping a puff of dirt between his boots. Bo dropped flat to the earth, glass grit biting into his cheek. The woman slid from her horse without hesitation, bow slung from her shoulder, an arrow knocked before her feet even touched the ground. A second shot sang past Bo's ear, close enough to catch the heat of the bullet's breath. "Two of 'em, maybe three," he said. Her bowstring hummed, and one of the shapes on the ridge lurched backward into the dust. She didn't watch him fall, only knocked another arrow, eyes fixed on the second muzzle flash. They moved together without speaking. Her skirting left along the gully, Bo climbing the ridge on the right, the silver watch in his pocket a sudden, irritating weight. Each step up was a whisper in the gravel. Each breath a slow draw against lungs already choked with grit. Halfway up, the wind carried something else to him. Wood smoke again, but thicker now, as if the fire was closer than it had any right to be. He froze, pressing against a rock. Below, her voice floated up into space between heartbeats. That's not their camp. The truth of it sharpened the air. Smoke meant something was burning, something they weren't supposed to see yet. From the crest, a man appeared, rifle barrel catching the sun. He was young, his face still full under the shadow of his hat. But the look in his eyes wasn't green. Bo knew it. Hard, hungry, and the kind that didn't care what a body had to do to earn a meal. They stared at each other for a half-second too long. Then Bo's rifle barked. The boy fell without sound, hat tumbling into the dust. He turned, scanning for the second shooter, but the ridge was empty now. Empty and silent in a way that said they hadn't left. Her footsteps reached him. She climbed the last few yards, bow still in her hand, breath steady. "You kill him?" she asked. Bo's eyes flicked to the still form below. "Yeah. Good." They stood together on the ridge, the land stretching away in all directions. Far in the west, smoke coiled upward in a black thread against the bruised sky. "That's your people?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was quieter. "Not yet, but if we stand here much longer, it will be." He glanced at her, searching for something in her face. She gave him nothing but the set of her mouth. The wind shifted again, and Bo's rifle caught a glint of light from somewhere far below. Another barrel. He didn't think. He just shoved her down, the crack of a third shot splitting the air a heartbeat later. They hit the dirt hard. She was already rolling to one knee, arrow drawn, eyes locked on the shooter's perch. But this time there was no target, just a low whisper of the wind carrying away the shot's echo. "They're not trying to kill us," Bo said, breathing hard. "No," she said, scanning the empty ridge. "They're telling us they could." She met his eyes, and in that moment he realized two things. She was more dangerous than anyone chasing them, and she wasn't sure she needed him alive to win. The wind died, and the land went still again. Still but not empty. Somewhere close, boots crunch in the dust. Then a man's voice, easy and sharp all at once. "Now! Ain't this a pretty picture?" The night stretched black and endless. The stars sharp as chipped glass scattered across the sky. The fire between them cracked and hissed, spitting tiny embers into the dark. Beyond its light, the desert pressed close, its silence thick enough to carry the weight of things unsaid. Bo sat with his back to a flat boulder, long legs stretched toward the flames, cleaning his rifle with slow, practiced motions. His hands knew the work well enough that his mind could wander, though it never wandered far. The silver watch lay open beside him on a saddle blanket, its broken face catching the firelight. Across from him, the Apache woman, Nita, held a strip of rabbit meat over the fire, eyes fixed on the slow curl of smoke. She hadn't spoken since sundown, and he hadn't pushed her. Some silences were safer than answers. A flicker of movement came from the shadows beyond the firelight. Caleb Maddox stepped into glow. Easy smile in place, a canteen dangling from his fingers. He moved like a man who'd learned to make friends before trouble noticed him. "You two sure know how to set a table," he said, settling on a flat rock. The canteen's cap popped, and he took a slow drink, eyes darting between them over the rim. Nita didn't look at him. "We didn't ask you to stay." Caleb grinned wider. "That a hint or a warning?" "Whichever you listen to," she said, and tore off a piece of meat. Bo slid the rifle's cleaning rod back into place, watching Caleb without lifting his head. "You still haven't said why you were out on that ridge." Caleb shrugged. "Same as you. Try not to get shot. That why you led us into a canyon full of rifles." The grin faltered, but only for a second. Information changes hands fast out here. Some of it's even true when you buy it. The fire popped loud enough to fill the space between them. Bo let it settle. In the distance, a coyote howled, a long, lonesome sound that seemed to make the cold sharper. Nita shifted slightly, pulling her blanket tighter. Bo caught the movement, but more than that, he caught the way her other hand drifted to her middle. It wasn't the first time he'd seen it. His eyes narrowed, but he said, "Nothing. Not yet." Caleb tossed a twig into the fire, watching it curl and blacken. "We're all headed the same way now, whether we like it or not. That smoke we saw, railroad men burning someone out, could be her people, could be another village. Either way, they're not slowing down." Nita's voice was quiet, almost swallowed by the wind. "It's mine." Caleb's eyes flicked to her, then to Bo. No one moved. Bo broke the stillness. "Then we ride at first light." The rest of the night passed in uneasy watch shifts. When Bo's turn came, he sat with his rifle laid across his knees, eyes on the horizon where the fire's light couldn't reach. The air smelled faintly of sage and something heavier, like rain that would never come. He thought about the look on Nita's face when she'd said it's mine. No fear, no plea, just the weight of knowing something worth saving might already be gone. He'd seen that look before in the mirror years ago. Near dawn, she stirred and came to sit beside him, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The fire had burned to embers, and the eastern sky was starting to bruise with light. "You carry something," she said, not as a question. "Everyone does." She studied him for a long time, eyes dark and unreadable. "Yours has a name?" He hesitated. The watch in his pocket felt heavier than the rifle. "Yeah." She waited, but he didn't give it. The sun broke the horizon in a slow spill of light, throwing long shadows across the desert. She pulled something from her pouch, a small carved wooden horse, its paint worn off except in the deep grooves. She turned it over in her fingers before passing it to him. "My brother made it," she said. "He was 8 when the soldiers came. I was not there to stop them." Bo turned the toy in his hand, feeling the weight of it. "Where is he now?" Her voice caught once before she forced it steady. "In the ground." Neither spoke for a while. The wind moved to the brush with a low hiss, like it didn't approve of what was being said. Caleb's voice cut through it from behind. "Hate to break the mood, but we got company." Bo was on his feet before the words finished, rifle in hand. Out on the horizon, riders moved through the dust. 5 of them, maybe more, their shapes wavering in the morning heat. Nita's hand pressed against her belly, the smallest, quickest motion, but he caught it. And this time he knew. "How far along?" he asked. Her eyes widened, but she didn't flinch. "Far enough you can't outrun it." The hoofbeats were louder now, the riders fanning out like wolves. Caleb's grin was gone, replaced with something sharper. Bo chambered around, the sound loud in the morning stillness. "Then we make our stand here?" Nita shook her head. "No, we make them chase us." The first rifle cracked in the distance, the shot tearing the air. Bo glanced at her, but she was already in the saddle. Caleb spat into the dust. Well, hell, guess we run. The riders broke into a gallop, the ground trembling beneath them. Bo swung into his saddle and kicked hard. The desert opened before them, endless and unforgiving, the wind in his face tasting of iron and smoke. Somewhere behind, another shot rang out, closer this time. The sky was the color of old bruises when the first shot split it open. The sound rolled across the plain, bouncing off the low hills and coming back thinner, sharper, like it had learned something on the way. Bo Carter stood at the edge of the Apache village, boots in the dust, rifle balanced against his shoulder. Smoke coiled from the huts at the far end, not from cooking fires, but from roofs already caught. The wind carried it into his lungs, bitter and hot. It mixed with the copper tang of blood that had no business being in the air this early. The railroad men came in hard, a loose line of riders kicking up a wall of dust behind them, faces half covered with bandanas, rifles in their hands. They looked less like men than an idea, one that didn't know the meaning of stop. Nita was already in the center of the street, bow drawn, her braids swinging in the wind. Her people moved around her, pulling children behind barricades of overturned wagons, shoving buckets of water toward the flames. "You take the left," she called to Bo without looking at him. "You sure you want me where they can see me?" he asked, scanning the riders. "They already see you," she said in loose and arrow. The first man off his horse was theirs, pitched sideways into the dust. Bo squeezed off a shot before his boots hit the ground, and another rider spun out his saddle, rifle tumbling. A shadow fell over them, and Bo turned to find Caleb Maddox stepping up beside him. His hat was gone, hair matted to his forehead, a fresh stain blooming dark across his shirt. "You're late," Bo said. "I had to decide which side of the story I want to die on," Caleb replied, and pulled his revolver. The riders were closer now, their shouts carried by the wind. The dust rose around them, swallowing their legs, making them look like they floated above the ground. Bo felt the weight of the silver watch in his pocket. He didn't pull it out. He didn't need to. The choice he'd been avoiding for years was already here. One of the riders broke from the line, charging straight for the heart of the village. Nita pivoted, drew, and let fly, the arrow taking him in the throat. He fell, horse bolting into the chaos. "More coming from the west?" Caleb shouted. Bo shifted, sighted, fired. The kick against his shoulder felt like a heartbeat, fast and hard. Somewhere in the smoke, he caught the glint of a badge on a chest. Railroad foreman. Not just another hired gun. He could end it here. One shot. Vengeance, neat and quick. But the shout behind him was Nita's, sharp with fear. He turned and saw her standing between the foreman's men and a cluster of women trying to haul water past the flames. She was exposed, the bow in her hand, but no arrow knocked, the smoke making her cough. The foreman raised his rifle. Bo's own barrel swung, but not toward the foreman's chest. He put the bullet into the man, aiming for Nita instead. The foreman lived. The man who would have killed her didn't. Caleb saw it, but said nothing. The fight pressed tighter, the sound of it deafening now. Gunfire, screams, the snap and groan of burning wood. Bo kept moving, kept firing, until the air turned black with smoke and the shapes in it were friend and enemy both. When the last shot faded, the wind carried only the sound of crackling wood and the cries of the wounded. The riders were gone, some dead in the dust, others fleeing into the hills. Bo lowered his rifle, chest heaving. Caleb was on his knees, blood soaking through his shirt in wide blossoms. Nita knelt beside him, her hands pressed hard over the wound. "You stay with us," she told him. Caleb's eyes found Bo's. "Don't waste what you've got left," he said, voice raw. Then his head tilted, his gaze fixing on something far beyond them. Nita's hand stilled. The wind shifted, pulling smoke away from the village. In the clearing air, the land looked raw and scorched, the kind of damage that wouldn't heal in any hurry. Bo stepped back, the watch in his hand now, heavy and cold. He looked once at Nita at the small, hard curve of her belly under the ash-streaked cloth. Without a word, he turned toward his horse. He mounted and rode east, the sun just breaking over the hills. He didn't look back. The wind carried his name after him, but never gave it back.